Assalamu alaikum, Nadareen. Welcome to 10th Civil Engineering Conference, which was being held in IEP Karachi office. This conference is now concluded, but there are many things that we should talk about in terms of the technical presentations. And also, let me tell you, in this conference there are many issues which are closely linked with the issues relating to not only Karachi but also to Pakistan. We have with us a very renowned expert, and whose objective is to conserve the buildings. We would like to know who exactly he is for our viewers, and what exactly he is doing, because I have heard him saying that the buildings of Karachi are nothing but the weapon of mass destruction. Thank you so much talking to us, and I would like you to introduce yourself in a bit detail so that our viewers should know who exactly you are.
My name is Randolph and I'm come originally from Boston, Massachusetts area, and I've also spent part of my education in Great Britain. And then in 1981, I had an Indo-American Exchange Fellowship. It brought me to this subcontinent for the first time, and during which I had the pleasure of discovering for myself Srinagar, Kashmir, which is, of course, a very historic town, and unfortunately the fights between India and Pakistan and the local populations have destroyed a lot that existed there that I saw first decades ago. And but I've fallen in love with the area. I've been to Pakistan. I was in India actually when the earthquake took place in 2005, and was able to get to the Indian part of Kashmir within a month. But then within a year, I came to Pakistan and studied what is in fact the mountain area of Kashmir, where the buildings are more made of stone than of fired brick, as you find them in Srinagar from the Vale of Kashmir. And so I've studied it in both places, and this is published in a book that I did for UNESCO.
It means you have a double connection with the subcontinent, India and Pakistan.
Yes.
Your nativity in the US as a post Cold War World War period, and your post World War period. I mean, America, became the world power, and your education in the UK, and that Britons have ruled this continent for a century. Yeah. So you have two connections with this area. That's great. And exactly, would you tell us what did you find when you visited both countries, which were once one country, and there are many jolts in the past, earthquakes in the past, and what was added to your observation which you had already?
Well, the subject of earthquakes only became an interest of mine when I moved to California to teach at Berkeley as a professor. And so I began looking particularly at masonry buildings. In California, everybody was saying that the earthquake will knock them down and whatnot, but I came from New England, where they have huge masonry buildings subjected to earthquake-level forces just from textile machines. So I studied the buildings of the Industrial Revolution, both in New England and in Great Britain. And I used that interest and knowledge in my efforts of preservation to take try to introduce a new look of buildings in California. And what what actually stimulated this interest was the discovery of the timber-laced architecture of Srinagar, Kashmir, which I had discovered in 1981, and then I studied in detail when I moved to California, and then I've been back there on a sabbatical in 1989, and after the earthquake, I went to both the areas of both countries, and that's when I discovered Pakistan for the first time, and traveled to Azad Kashmir, as you call it, and then again in 2010 I came on a mission for UNESCO after the Indus Valley floods, because I had become involved with disasters in general by working for what's called FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, where I dealt with disasters of all types in the domestic environment. So, but then I subsequently have gone to Afghanistan, to Iran. I was in Iran after the earthquake in Bam, and I've been to Turkey many times after the earthquakes there, several different earthquakes, and then I was in Gujarat after the earthquake there, which here in Karachi is almost walking distance from here. One could, if one was allowed, go back to Kutch, which is just over the border from Pakistan, in Gujarat, India.
Founded in 1948 with the blessings of Father of the Nation, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Institution of Engineers, Pakistan is the biggest and the premier engineering organization for engineers in Pakistan, established in 1948 with its headquarters at Dhaka. In 1972, the headquarters were shifted to Lahore. The name was amended by substitution of institution for institute in line with international trend in the 22nd AGM held in 1979. After long way of its journey, the institution has 10 regional centers.
We were talking about Karachi here, and you shown in your presentation quite a few pictures, and Vice Chancellor ND University was telling us that you once stolen, these are not buildings, but a weapon of mass destruction.
I didn't say that, but your Vice Chancellor, somebody else he said that, but that he believed that's probably...
you think it's true? Because you have gone through the city also.
I've only been able to go through the city in a car to get here from Ned and to get to the Ramada Hotel for the previous conference from Ned. And when I was here for UNESCO, it was only from the airport to then go to Mohenjo-daro and Takala and the historical cities.
Have you been there in Mohenjo-daro?
Yes, that was part of our reconnaissance for UNESCO after the floods. And most amazing, you talk about old historic walls and the ruins of buildings. They date back from before Rome, and so I found it fascinating and very important. And so long-lasting.
I'm from Manzoor.
You are. Is your father a potter? Yes.
My city Larkana is just 25 kilometers from that site.
Oh, because in my first lecture for the South Asian Conference on Earthquake Engineering, led off with Mohenjo-daro and the potters as an entree to say these are traditional crafts that need to be preserved.
So let's come back to your area of study. I would like to know that, I mean, there are, if not thousands, hundreds of earthquakes, not only in this area, but, if you talk about Asia at least. What do you think, is there any change in culture of, adopting to new challenging and, mitigating new risks while constructing buildings?
In what structure?
In constructing buildings.
Oh. Well, it's a very interesting question generally in history, because earthquakes are so infrequent, and if you look at any one given spot on the planet, it's very rare for the earthquake to affect the same spot within the lifespan of individuals, people on the planet. The only place that I've really seen and experienced, met people is really Italy. There's been several repeating earthquakes in some places, but in Italy in general, the earthquakes that we've been reading about, each one is in a different place. I mean, if there are two earthquakes in the same place, it's part of the same shift, and then a larger earthquake can follow a precursor, or an aftershock can follow an earthquake. But so expecting engineering and architecture and building construction to change just because of an earthquake, there are certainly examples of this. Lisbon, Portugal, the Gaiola system came out of an earthquake, and they even came up with an engineering, actually they invented a shaking table, which was simply the army marching across a platform to test some of their schemes. So yes, that does happen. But when in the case of Gujarat, I tried to estimate, is there some evidence that the timber laminated or timber laced construction was a result of earthquake influence, and Kashmir as well. And what I can see is that it gets mixed up with soft soil, and it's a mere fact of trying to come up with a system that holds the building together, even if it's slightly sinking because of the soil. And but that then it works better in an earthquake as well, and they discover this in an earthquake. So it's a dynamic, but not necessarily just a direct linear process. There are usually other reasons why these mitigation designs are put forward.
One last question. I mean, of course, it's lunchtime. I'm so sorry to hold you here. Yeah. Okay. I don't know exactly. I don't know how much you know about Karachi's building, but this is one of the concern that everyone is talking about. That during the last earthquake, the people are saying that there should be a sea of change in the code of construction in this city. While talking to these people who are in the conference, do you have any feel that there is some changes coming in Karachi's construction?
Talking to people in the conferences, people that I've spoken to are all over the country, and so I can't answer your question with specific. I'm sure that anybody who's here, who's trained as an engineer, is going to do their best effort, even without an earthquake, to do a safe building that's also safe from seismic. What I tried to address in my talk is that even with the best efforts, there are reasons why these buildings fail. It comes partly from the history of the design process, that there's certain, as I mentioned there are flaws in the engineering calculation formulae that they have from presumptions of what's the structural frame as distinct from the architectural finishes. And if they're not integrated into a scheme where the stiffness of one, which is much stiffer than the other, completely corrupts the basis on which the calculations are done, the best engineering in the world isn't going to save it if you use that methodology. So that's why I've proposed a method which is integrative of some of what I've learned from these other older buildings, but which are of masonry, which is not recognized in current engineering research and schooling and codes and methodology. We could actually improve the systems that are now being used for buildings.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you, and
Yeah.
have a good stay in Pakistan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Send me-
Yes, sure.